Love poetry usually deals in flattery. Eyes like suns, cheeks like roses, voices like music. But what if a poet skipped the praise and told the plain truth? Will you still call it love poetry? That's exactly what Shakespeare does in his famously cheeky and refreshingly honest poem, My Mistress's Eyes Are Nothing Like the Sun. Before I begin, let me tell you why I'm doing this video. We had placed a poll in our priority member section, and out of the four poems, this one got the maximum votes. If you too wish to participate in such polls in the future, you may consider joining as our priority members. How to join? You can simply click on the join button and choose the membership tier which suits you. Now, let's start today's class. This poem is also called sonnet number 130. So, we need to know what sonnets are. A sonnet is a poetic form that originated in Italy and got extremely popular in Elizabethan England. It is a 14-line poem, usually in iambic pentameter. Based on the arrangement of lines, the rhyme schemes, there are different kinds of sonnets, the most popular ones being the Petrarchan or the Italian kind of sonnet and the Shakespearean type of sonnet. I've already made a very detailed video on the development of sonnet as a genre. If you are interested, you can go back and check that. William Shakespeare wrote 154 sonnets, which were first published in 1609. Normally, we associate Shakespeare with plays, but these poems show that he also had ability in poetry writing, where we can discover so much more of Shakespeare and his attitude to life, attitude to love. Usually, sonnets are written when someone is in love with someone, so there is a figure for whom a poet writes sonnets. What about Shakespeare? From among these sonnets that he wrote, we can clearly distinguish between two kinds of subjects for whom he is writing his sonnets. First is a fair youth, second, a dark lady. The first 126 sonnets are addressed to this fair youth, where he explores themes of friendship, loyalty, philosophical meditation on beauty, mortality, all these things. And the kind of love that is expressed in those sonnets is an intellectual one and has more to do with a romantic, divine, platonic kind of affection. When we come to the later chunk of his sonnets, that is 127 to 154, the sonnets are mostly addressed to a woman, and we have themes like frustration, emotional conflict, desire, physicality of love. What is interesting about this later set of sonnets is that through these sonnets, Shakespeare not only presents his emotions, his desire, his earthly love for this dark lady, but also challenges certain ongoing conventions of his day. That's why he's Shakespeare, right? So, what was that ongoing convention? What was that style of writing sonnet that he was attacking or going against? It was the Petrarchan norm. It was the idea of courtly love tradition, where the beloved or the person whom the poet loved was always placed on a pedestal, on a higher level, worshipped as a goddess. And usually the sonnets had elaborate descriptions using similes, metaphors, different kinds of images and symbolism in order to present the beauty of that beloved. And there was always a conventional beauty standard that was established. Even in today's days, we do have certain beauty standards deep ingrained in our minds, like a certain body shape, a certain skin coloration appears to be more beautiful to us because we are kind of pushed into believing that that is beautiful. Shakespeare rejects that standardization of beauty, standardization of poetry. Now let's look at the poem to understand why I'm saying this. My mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun. That was far from truth. People's eyes are like eyes. You cannot compare somebody's eyes to stars because it would be something very artificial. Coral is a very red colored object, and if somebody's lips are compared to coral, That means that person has applied red lipstick. You cannot have red lips actually like corals, because that might actually indicate that you have a grave disease where your lips are turning red. Then why do poets do it? They do it to exaggerate their affection, their emotion, by exaggerating the beauty of the beloved. It's like in my imagination, I am seeing your lips as red as coral. It means my love is so strong and powerful that I have such great imagination. Shakespeare says, I don't have that kind of a tendency to romanticize the lips of my beloved, comparing it to red coral. If snow be white, why then her breasts are dun? Dun means a dull brownish grey. We have come across innumerable poems where fairness of skin is considered to be a virtue. He says, no, the skin of my lady is not at all as white as snow. If hairs be wires, black wires grow on her head. Unlike the beauty standard of the blonde or the brunette, while having golden brown hair is an asset, Shakespeare is saying, my lady has black hair. I have seen roses damasked, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. This is an actual dig at the conventional tendency of comparing a woman's cheek with a white or a red rose. He says, no, she looks normal to me. And in these lines, we do have an echo of his own sonnet, sonnet number 127, and that sets the mood for the entire series, where he says, in the old age, that is, in the past, black was not counted fair. It's paradoxical. Why should black be counted fair? But he says that in the old age, black was not counted fair, or if it were, it bore not beauty's name. Another interesting thing to note is that this sonnet was published in 1609, and he had composed Macbeth in 1606. And in Macbeth, we have such famous lines like, fair is foul and foul is fair. So, this idea that whatever the world considers as fair might not be beautiful actually, and this tendency to challenge standardized idea of beauty is something we find across his poems, across his plays. And in some perfumes, is there more delight when he talks about how his beloved smells. He says that perfumes are better. Sometimes I've come across better perfumes because she's human after all. Than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. Reeks is a very strong word. Usually, you do not use the word reeks with any good smell. Reeks is like nasty kind of smell. A waste bin reeks. A rotten thing reeks. You don't say a lady's breath reeks because that is impolite. Ladies should always have fresh breath. That is the conventional idea. So he says that I have not found my mistress's breath as a very delightful thing like some perfume. Yes, he has found delight in that, but it's not like it is comparable to an expensive perfume. I love to hear her speak. Yet, well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. If you talk about sound, then music has a greater appeal. If you talk about content, that's a different thing altogether. He's not saying that I think music has more intellectual content than my conversation with my beloved. He says musicality is less in our voice, more in a musical instrument. And isn't that right? Can you ever be as perfect as a piano, as perfect as a violin when you sing? And when we talk, we are not musical at all. Even when we try to speak in a very nice way, setting a certain tone, even then, we're not musical like a piano. And he says exactly that no, she's not that. I grant, I never saw a goddess go. Now, this is also something that poets usually say, that their beloveds are like goddesses. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. Who tread on the ground? Human beings. My mistress is not a goddess, she is a human being. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare. Note this word, and yet. It comes at the end of the poem, And in Shakespeare's sonnets, we do have two lines at the end of the sonnets where he gives a certain kind of a conclusive statement. And this is called the concluding couplet, the rhyming couplet, so famous in Shakespeare's sonnets. Couplet means couple of lines together, two lines together who are rhyming also. Rare and compare, rhyming. So these are couplets because they have rhyming words at the end. And in case of Shakespeare's sonnet, the last two lines of the sonnets are very important. They provide the gist of the entire poem. There is another thing in a sonnet which Shakespeare manipulates, and it's called volta. Volta is usually sonnets. Back in those days, they had an octave sestet structure. First, there will be 8 lines of statement. Then, the poet will uh, give a counter statement. Like he will say, this is happening. Yet, and then he will give an opposite way of looking at the same thing. And this turn was called volta, and it usually came in the ninth line, beginning of the ninth line. Usually, poets used words like but, yet, however, even though, therefore. So, somehow there will be an indication that I am now going to talk about the same issue from a different perspective. So, that was usually the structure of sonnets, but Shakespeare had to redefine it. So, what he does, he brings down the volta often in his sonnets, not always, often, to the second last line. That is, to his concluding couplet. Therefore, his poem, instead of reading like an 8-6 division, is basically a 12-2 division. 12 lines of statement, then the volta or the turn, which comes with the expression and yet. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare, that all the things that I've said earlier, you have started to feel that I don't love my beloved? No, it's actually the opposite. And yet, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. I don't have to depend on false comparisons, false glorification to establish the reality of my love. And that's it. That gives you the gist of this entire poem, that he is an advocate of practical, real, earthly love, which does not glorify a beloved who is worshipped on a pedestal, who is unattainable. And the idea of being with his mistress, that is also very interesting. Notice one thing. He's saying that my mistress's eyes are nothing like the sun, like coral is redder than her lips. Why is he saying all these things? Because usually women have a tendency to put a lot of makeup. They paint their lips red. They put a lot of powder to look white as Snow White. And usually women apply a lot of makeup to impress. Like I'm talking about back in those days. Like nowadays, a lot of other kinds of narratives are there. I'm not going into that. But usually putting on a lot of makeup, as we have seen in case of the Rape of the Lock also, is a part of a ritual which would enable the woman to get the attention of a man. That means that artificiality is a strategy to win someone's affection, right? And a woman would feel comfortable without her makeup only in front of a man who provides her with real love. Like you're so secure in that relationship, you don't have to paint your lips red or kind of put on powder on your face to look white. So obviously, the poets who saw their beloveds with ruby colored lips and white skin, whiter than natural, they were probably looking at the made up bodies of the women, because their kind of love is so artificial that the women were not actually revealing to them what they actually look like. This is real. This is the practical relationship he has. There is no question of unattainable desire, but everything is attained by him. They have a relationship which they celebrate, and they are so secure in each other's company that his mistress doesn't need to change herself in any way. She's comfortable revealing to him whatever she is. This is one way of looking at it. And if you are a feminist, then of course you would see that he is challenging the objectification of women, because women are not just how they look, but how they are as a person. But usually, a woman's worth in poetry, in sonnets of Elizabethan period, is usually done in terms of not her intellect, not her wit, but her appearance, her features. At the same time, he is giving a space to a flawed but real female figure. Flawed as in compared to the standardized notion of beauty, the woman the speaker is in love with is flawed, but she's real. So, this is preferable to the poet, which means artificiality and standardization and romanticization. These things are not at all acceptable to a man who prioritizes real experience of love. If you talk about the general form, then, as I told you, you can look at the whole poem broken up in actually four sections. First four lines is the first quatrain. Like this, you have three quatrains. Three fours are 12. So, three quatrains followed by rhyming couplet. Why I am breaking them into quatrains? Because that is what the rhyming scheme will help us do. What is the rhyming scheme? The first line ends in sun, so it will be A. The second line is red, it will be B. Again, done rhymes with sun. Sun is A, so done is A. And then fourth line is rhyming with the second line. Second line we had called B, so it will be B. So it is A, B, A, B. Again, in the fifth line, you don't have any connection with the previous lines. So you have to name it as C. So A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F. This is how the rhyme scheme will go, and it will end in rhyming couplet G, G. So that is usually the structure of Shakespeare's sonnets, where you have three quatrains followed by a rhyming couplet. Now, what about figures of speech here? Let's identify them one by one. The first line itself is a rejection of a common simile. Instead of saying, my mistress's eyes are like the sun, where it would have been a simile, he is using a negative simile, you can say. Negative comparison, that's nothing like the sun. So, is it a simile? In a negative way, yes. Coral is far more red than her lips red. So, of course, he is comparing the color of his lady's lips with coral. But in that comparison, similarity is not established, difference is established. So, this is also a negative kind of a simile. When he constantly uses the same word in successive sentences, like if snow be white, if hairs be wires, he is creating a pattern, and this is called anaphora, the repetition of if in successive clauses of successive sentences. So, this is another figure of speech he uses here when he says, I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music hath a far more pleasing sound. So, he is saying that she has a lovely voice, but music has a more pleasing sound. So, he is putting two opposite kind of a statement, like her voice is okay, music is more musical. So, two opposite ideas, but they are not contradicting each other. This is called antithesis. So, you have antithesis here. Don't forget about the volta at the end, and yet. And when he says, I think my love as rare, he is not being proud or vain or over expressive. He says, I think I love her. And that humility, that kind of honesty is reflected through this expression, think. He's not saying, I declare. He's saying, I think. So, this is kind of an understatement, which we also might call a litotes. So, it's a mild way to express deep affection. And putting love in a separate sentence from compare, he's saying that people who compare don't have the kind of love that I have for my beloved. So, it is a very refreshing, genuine kind of a love that we see here. And this is how Shakespeare looked at love. If you look at a play like Twelfth Night and see how Orsino's love is presented, who is a very romantic person without any sense of realism, and how Viola's love is presented, you can understand the difference and which one Shakespeare prioritizes, which one Shakespeare gives more value to. So, this is the flavor of Dark Lady sonnets, where you don't have any Valentine's Day air, but it is more like real relationship, which is something which we should appreciate more in today's time, because every single day we are getting trapped in one and more digital relationships. So it's important to remain real, to remain rooted, to tread on the ground, as he says. I hope you liked this sonnet, and I thank my members who had voted for this poem. I really loved discussing it with you. Do let me know in the comment section if you want me to take up any other sonnet by Shakespeare, and I will definitely consider it. So, till we meet in some next video very soon, this is Monami Mukherjee signing off. Bye bye.